The darkest prison cell in the world isn't made of concrete and steel. Oh, no. The most confining prison ever built is the one we construct in our own minds. And here's what's fascinating about this prison. We are both the prisoner and the guard. We hold the keys to our freedom. Yet most of us choose to remain locked away. That negative voice in your head, it's the warden of your prison. And it's time we staged a rebellion. You know the voice I'm talking about? The one that whispers, "You're not good enough." The one that reminds you of every mistake you've ever made. The one that keeps a meticulous inventory of all your failures while conveniently forgetting your successes. Have you ever wondered why some people achieve extraordinary things while others, equally talented, equally blessed, remain stuck in mediocrity? It's rarely about capability. It's almost always about what's happening between their ears. The average person has about 60,000 thoughts per day. And here's the tragedy. For many people, 80 of those thoughts are negative. That's 48,000 negative thoughts every single day. And we wonder why we feel overwhelmed, anxious, and stuck. Let's be honest about some. Negative thinking is exhausting. It's like carrying a heavy backpack everywhere you go. You get so used to the weight that you forget you're carrying it, but it's draining your energy with every step. It limits how far you can go, how fast you can move, how much you can accomplish. Think about how much mental and emotional energy you expend when you're caught in negative thought loops. The rumination about past mistakes, the anxiety about future possibilities, the comparisons between your reality and some idealized version of what's the internal arguments defending your limitations. All that energy, all of it, could be directed toward creating, building, growing, connecting, contributing. What could you accomplish if you reclaimed that energy? What heights could you reach if you weren't constantly dragging yourself down? But what if I told you that this prison of negative thinking isn't your natural state? What if I told you that you weren't born this way? That somewhere along the way you picked up these thinking patterns like a bad habit, and like any habit, they can be broken. You see, thoughts are just visitors. You don't have to offer them a permanent residence in your mind. I met a woman once who had lost everything. Her business had failed during an economic downturn. Her marriage had crumbled under the strain. Her health had deteriorated from the stress. By all accounts, she had every reason to be consumed by negative thinking. When I asked her how she managed to keep going, she said something I'll never forget. I realized that my circumstances were trying to dictate my thinking, but I made a decision that my thinking would dictate my circumstances. Within 3 years, she had built a new business twice the size of her previous one. She had found love again. Her health had been restored, not because her external world changed first, but because she changed her internal world first. My mind is like fertile soil. Whatever seeds you plant will grow. Plant seeds of doubt, fear, and limitation, and that's exactly what you'll harvest. But plant seeds of possibility, opportunity, and action, and you'll create a life beyond your wildest dreams. So how do we kill negative thinking? How do we break out of this self-imposed prison? It begins with awareness. Most people never take the time to actually examine their thinking. They let thoughts run through their minds unchecked, unquestioned, unchallenged. They accept mental poison without resistance. When was the last time you actually listened to the conversation happening in your mind? When was the last time you challenged those thoughts? If your best friend talked to you the way you talk to yourself, would they still be your friend? I doubt it. Yet we tolerate this abuse from ourselves day after day, year after year. Here's a simple exercise. For the next 24 hours, catch yourself every time you have a negative thought. Don't judge it, don't fight it, just notice it. Become aware of it, shine the light of your awareness on it. You'll be shocked at how many times you put yourself down, anticipate the worst, or focus on what's lacking rather than what's present. Awareness is the first step to change. You can't transform what you don't acknowledge. The second step is to challenge these thoughts. Ask yourself, is this actually true? Or is this just a story I'm telling myself? Most negative thinking doesn't stand up to rational examination. I'll never be successful. Really? Never? You can predict the entire course of your life with absolute certainty. Nobody appreciates me. Nobody, not a single person in your life, values your contribution. I always mess things up. Always. You've never done anything right in your entire life. When we subject our negative thinking to this kind of scrutiny, we often find that it's built on exaggerations, distortions, and outright lies. I remember working with a talented young writer who was paralyzed by the belief that his work wasn't good enough. Everyone will hate it. He told me. When I asked him to define everyone, he couldn't. When I asked him for evidence that his work was subpar, he had none. In fact, the feedback he'd received had been overwhelmingly positive. But he had allowed one critic's opinion to become everyone in his mind. Once he recognized this distortion, he was able to move forward. His first book went on to become a bestseller. Not because his writing improved dramatically, but because he stopped allowing negative thinking to keep his existing talent hidden from the world. The third step to killing negative thinking is replacement. Nature abhors a vacuum. If you simply try to stop negative thinking without replacing it with something else, the negativity will rush back in like air filling an empty space. This doesn't mean engaging in delusional positive thinking. It means adopting realistic, constructive thinking that acknowledges problems while focusing on solutions and relies on actions rather than wishes. I once coached a business owner facing bankruptcy. His response swung between negative thinking, "I'm a failure," and delusional positive thinking, "something magical will happen." Instead, we worked on realistic, constructive thinking. This business is struggling, but that doesn't define me. I have valuable skills and can learn from this situation to move forward. With this foundation, he negotiated with creditors, pivoted his business model, and created a stronger company through clear-eyed thinking followed by decisive action. The fourth step to killing negative thinking is reframing. This is the art of looking at the same situation from a completely different perspective. Most negative thinking follows predictable patterns. We catastrophize, imagining the worst possible outcomes. We personalize, assuming we're the cause of everything that goes wrong. We generalize, taking one negative event and turning it into a universal law. We polarize, seeing situations as entirely good or entirely bad with no middle ground. Reframing challenges these patterns by asking, what's another way to look at this? It's not about sugarcoating reality or engaging in denial. It's about recognizing that there are multiple interpretations of most situations, and we have the power to choose the one that serves us best. Consider job rejection. The negative thinking frame says, I'm not good enough. No one wants to hire me. I'll never find work. The reframe might be, this position wasn't the right fit. Every no brings me closer to the right eyes. This frees me to find an opportunity better suited to my strengths. Or think about a conflict with a loved one. The negative frame says, they don't respect me. This relationship is doomed. I always end up getting hurt. The reframe might be, this disagreement is teaching us about our boundaries and needs. Working through conflict is how relationships grow stronger. This is uncomfortable but potentially valuable. I once worked with a sales professional who was devastated by a lost deal. In his mind, he had failed completely, and this one rejection defined his value. We worked on reframing the situation. What had he learned? How could that information improve his approach with the next prospect? What strengths had he demonstrated even though the outcome wasn't what he wanted? Through this process, the lost deal transformed from a personal indictment into a valuable learning experience. His approach to subsequent clients was more informed, more confident, and ultimately more successful. Reframing isn't about ignoring problems or pretending negative events are positive ones. It's about finding the opportunity within the obstacle, the lesson within the disappointment, the door that opens when another closes. Practice this skill by catching yourself in negative interpretations and deliberately generating alternatives. Ask, what would someone I admire see in this situation? What might I learn here? How might this benefit me in ways I can't currently see? Over time, this practice builds mental flexibility. the ability to shift perspectives at will rather than getting locked into destructive thought patterns, and that flexibility is essential for navigating life's inevitable challenges without being derailed by them. The fifth step to killing negative thinking is consistency. Changing your thinking isn't an event, it's a process. It's something you practice daily, hourly, even minute by minute at first. Think of it like physical exercise. You don't get in shape by working out once, no matter how intense that workout is. You get in shape by showing up consistently day after day. Similarly, you don't transform your thinking with a single positive affirmation or one moment of clarity. You transform it through persistent effort, through catching yourself in negative spirals and gently redirecting your mind thousands of times. Over time, this becomes easier. The neural pathways associated with negative thinking begin to weaken from disuse, while the pathways associated with constructive thinking strengthen. What once required conscious effort eventually becomes your default. But this process takes time. And in today's world of instant gratification, that's not what people want to hear. They want the mental equivalent of a pill that will solve all their problems overnight. That pill doesn't exist. What does exist is the compound effect of small, consistent actions. Every time you catch a negative thought and replace it with a constructive one, you're laying another brick in the foundation of your new mental home. One brick doesn't look like much, neither does 2 or 10 or even 100. But over time, those bricks add up to a structure of remarkable strength and beauty. The fifth step is environment. You've heard the saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. This isn't just about income or success. It's about thinking patterns. Negative thinking is contagious. If you spend your time with people who constantly complain, who see problems instead of possibilities, who talk about why things won't work instead of how they might, their thinking will infect yours. Conversely, if you surround yourself with people who think constructively, who focus on solutions instead of problems, who take responsibility instead of placing blame, their patterns will rub off on you too. This doesn't mean you should abandon friends or family members who are going through tough times or who struggle with negativity. But it does mean being intentional about who you allow to influence your thinking. For every person in your life who pulls you down with their negativity, seek out someone who lifts you up with their constructive outlook. For every hour you spend in an environment that reinforces limited thinking, spend at least an hour in an environment that expands your sense of what's possible. Read books that challenge and inspire you. Listen to talks and podcasts that introduce you to new ideas and perspectives. Participate in communities online or offline where growth and possibility are the dominant themes. I know a woman who transformed her thinking and subsequently her life, largely by changing the input she allowed into her mind during her daily commute. She replaced angry talk radio with audiobooks and podcasts focused on personal growth. That one simple change, what she listened to for 40 minutes each way, 5 days a week, completely shifted her perspective over time. The books and media you consume, the conversations you participate in, the social media feeds you scroll through, all of these shape your thinking in ways both subtle and profound. Choose wisely. The sixth step is action. Mental work must translate into tangible steps in the real world. Thinking without all action is just daydreaming. The most powerful way to reshape your thinking is to take actions that contradict your negative beliefs. When you do the very thing your negative thoughts tell you can't do, those thoughts lose their power. If your mind says, "I'm not confident," and then you speak up despite your fear, you've provided evidence that contradicts that belief. If your mind says, "I'm not disciplined enough to exercise," and then you work out consistently, you've created a crack in that limiting story. When your actions and negative thoughts conflict, and you repeat those actions consistently, your thoughts will eventually align with your behaviors. I worked with an entrepreneur who was brilliant at generating ideas, but terrified of public speaking. His negative thinking told him he would humiliate himself if he ever got on stage. This belief was limiting the growth of his business. as he was turning down opportunities to share his expertise at industry events. The first few were terrifying for him, but by the 10th week, something had shifted. Not because we had completely overhauled his thinking first, but because his actions were gradually changing his thoughts. The evidence of his own experience that he could indeed speak in public without disaster was more powerful than any amount of purely mental work could have been. This is why taking action, even small action, even imperfect action, is so critical to killing negative thinking. You can't just think your way out of negative thinking. You have to act your way out too. The 7th step is gratitude. This might seem simple, perhaps even cliche, but its power to transform negative thinking is profound and backed by considerable research. When we're caught in negative thinking, our mind becomes like a vacuum cleaner, sucking up everything that's wrong, everything that's lacking, everything that's broken in our lives. We become experts at spotting problems while simultaneously becoming blind to blessings. Gratitude reverses this process. It trains your mind to notice what's working, what's abundant, what's going right. And here's what's fascinating. Your mind cannot simultaneously hold gratitude and negative thinking. They're like oil and water. They don't mix. I've seen people with every material advantage imaginable who were miserable because their thinking focused exclusively on what they lacked. And I've seen people who had every reason to complain. People facing terminal illness, devastating loss, extreme hardship, who radiated joy because they maintained a perspective of gratitude. There was a study conducted where participants were asked to write down 3 things they were grateful for every night before bed for 21 days. Just 3 things. It took less than 5 minutes. At the end of the 3 weeks, the participants showed significant decreases in depression and anxiety, and significant increases in satisfaction with life. Think about that. 5 minutes a day of intentional gratitude produced measurable changes in mental well-being in just 3 weeks. That's a remarkable return on investment. But gratitude isn't just about feeling better. It fundamentally changes how you perceive reality. When you're constantly scanning your environment for things to appreciate, you literally see a different world in the person who's scanning for things to criticize. Start small. Each morning when you wake up or each night before you sleep, identify 3 specific things you're grateful for. Not vague categories like my family or my health, but specific moments or aspects. The way your child laughed at dinner, the feeling of sunshine on your face during your lunch break, the colleague who helped you solve a problem at work. Over time, expand this practice beyond formal gratitude lists. Train yourself to notice moments of beauty, kindness, or joy as they occur in real time. When you receive good service at a restaurant, don't just accept it as expected. Recognize it as a gift. When a friend remembers something important to you, don't take it for granted. Acknowledge the care that this isn't about denying problems or pretending everything is perfect. It's about correcting the negativity bias that our brains naturally possess. The tendency to give more weight and attention to negative experiences than positive ones. It's about creating balance in your perception, making sure you're registering the full spectrum of your experience instead of just the dark end. I know a man who lost his job during a major economic downturn. For months, his thinking was dominated by fear, resentment, and worry. Then he began a practice of gratitude. At first, it felt forced, almost insincere. What did he have to be grateful for when his life was falling apart? But he persisted. He found small things. A friend who checked in on him regularly, the public library where he could use computers for his job search, the good health that allowed him to take long walks when anxiety threatened to overwhelm him. As he consistently practiced gratitude, something shifted. He didn't suddenly love being unemployed, but he stopped seeing himself as a victim. He began to notice opportunities he'd been blind to before. He reconnected with a former colleague who offered him project work, which eventually led to a position better than the one he'd lost. Later, when he reflected on this period, he said, "Losing my job was difficult, but it was also one of the best things that ever happened to me." It forced me to reevaluate what really mattered, to develop resilience I didn't know I had, and ultimately to find work that was more aligned with my values and strength. This transformation wasn't immediate, and it wasn't automatic. It was the result of a deliberate choice to practice gratitude even when it was difficult, to control his focus rather than letting circumstances control it for him. You have the same choice, no matter what you're facing right now. There are aspects of your life worthy of gratitude. Focusing on them won't magically solve all your problems, but it will give you the mental and emotional resources to address those problems more effectively. Cultivating gratitude is like building an immune system for your mind. It doesn't prevent negative events from occurring, but it helps you respond to them with resilience rather than being completely derailed by them. The eighth and final step is service. This might seem unrelated to negative thinking at first, but it's actually one of the most powerful antidotes. Negative thinking is inherently self-focused. It keeps our attention turned inward, obsessing over our own perceived inadequacies, limitations, and problems. The more we focus on ourselves, the more our flaws and difficulties expand in our consciousness. Service breaks this cycle by turning our attention outward. When we focus on contributing to others, on adding value to the world beyond ourselves, we naturally spend less mental energy ruminating on our own issues. Moreover, service provides perspective. Many of our negative thoughts stem from concerns that seem catastrophic until we encounter someone facing truly dire circumstances. It's hard to maintain the belief that your life is uniquely difficult when you're helping someone who has overcome obstacles far greater than your own. It's challenging to stay absorbed in petty concerns when you're engaged in work that genuinely matters to others. I know a man who struggled with depression and negative thinking for decades. Therapy helped, medication helped, all the techniques we've discussed helped somewhat, but nothing transformed his thinking like beginning to volunteer with young people who had aged out of the foster care system. As he invested in helping these young adults navigate education, employment, and independent living, his own problems receded in importance. Not because they magically disappeared, but because they took their proper place in a larger context. His negative thoughts didn't have the chance to dominate his mental landscape anymore because his mind was occupied with more consequential matters. How to help a young person find stable housing, how to connect another with educational opportunities, how to support another through a crisis. In the process of serving others, he found what we all ultimately seek, a life focused not on our own comfort or advancement, but on creating meaningful impact. And ironically, this shift away from self-focus brought him the very peace and fulfillment that his previous self-focused negative thinking had prevented. This isn't to suggest that serving others is a way to escape dealing with your own legitimate needs and challenges. Rather, it's a recognition that our minds work best when they're engaged with matters larger than our personal concerns. So if you find yourself trapped in cycles of negative thinking, try this. Ask how you can be of service today. How can you add value to someone else's life? How can you contribute, even in a small way, to addressing a need in your community? It could be as simple as really listening to a friend who's going through a tough time, or helping an elderly neighbor with errands, or volunteering for an hour at a local organization. The specific form of service isn't what matters most. What matters is the shift in focus from your problems to someone else's needs. The goal isn't to eliminate negative thoughts entirely. It's to change your relationship with them, to recognize them for what they are, mental events, not absolute truths, and to prevent them from dominating your consciousness and dictating your actions. Think of negative thoughts like rain. You can't prevent rain from falling occasionally, but you can build a good roof, carry an umbrella, install proper drainage. You can ensure that even when it rains, your life doesn't flood. Similarly, you can't prevent negative thoughts from arising occasionally, but you can develop the mental systems that prevent them from soaking everything else in your life, from causing damage that lasts long after the thought itself has passed. This is what we mean by killing negative thinking. Not eliminating every negative thought, but removing the power of negative thinking patterns to control your life. In all my years of working with people from all walks of life, from CEOs to formerly incarcerated individuals trying to rebuild their lives, I've never met anyone who created extraordinary results while maintaining toxic thinking pattern. And I've never met anyone who transformed their thinking in the ways we've discussed, who didn't also transform their results. The connection is that direct, that powerful, that unavoidable. So I ask you, what could your life look like if you weren't held back by negative thinking? What goals would you pursue? What relationships would you build or repair? What contributions would you make? What joy would you allow yourself to experience? These aren't hypothetical questions. The person you could become without the burden of negative thinking isn't a fantasy. They're a possibility waiting to be realized through the kind of consistent, purposeful mental work we've been discussing. Every great achievement in human history began with a thought. Someone thought this could work. Someone thought this is possible. Someone thought I'm going to try. Conversely, how many potential achievements never materialized because someone thought this won't work, or this isn't possible, or I can't try. Your thoughts create the boundaries of your life. They determine what you attempt and what you avoid, what you endure, what you escape, what you build and what you destroy. Change your thinking and you change those boundaries. You create new possibilities. You open doors that negative thinking had convinced you were locked forever. This isn't just about feeling better, although that's certainly one benefit. It's about becoming more effective in every area of your life. It's about accessing the full range of your capabilities instead of the limited subset that negative thinking allows you to use. I want to leave you with a challenge. For the next 30 days, commit to the process we've discussed. Practice awareness. Challenge negative thoughts. Replace them with realistic, constructive alternatives. Do this consistently. Be mindful of your environment. Take action that contradicts your limiting beliefs. Look for opportunities to be of service. Do this not as a one-time experiment, but as the beginning of a lifelong practice. Because that's what this is, a practice that you'll refine and deepen over time, not a quick fix that you'll implement and then abandon. The prison of negative thinking wasn't built in a day, and it won't be dismantled in a day either. But every day that you engage in this work, you remove another bar from your cell. You create more space, more freedom, more possibility, until one day you step fully into the life that was waiting for you all along on the other side of those prison walls. A life defined not by fear and limitation, but by growth and contribution. Not by what could go wrong, but by what could go right. Not by who you think you are, but by who you truly have the potential to become. That life is available to you. The key to unlock it lies in your commitment to kill the negative thinking that has held you captive for too long. Will you pick up that key? Will you turn it in the lock? Will you walk through the door to the extraordinary life that awaits you? The choice, as it has always been, is yours. But know that just that choice lies everything you've ever wanted. Not handed to you effortlessly, but available to you through the focused effort and determination that become possible when you're no longer sabotaged by your own. I believe you can make this choice. I believe you can do this work. I believe you can create this trend. The question is, you believe it too? And if not yet, are you willing to act as if you do until the evidence of your own experience convinces you otherwise? Your answer to these questions will determine not just the quality of your thinking, but the quality of your life. Choose wisely. Choose consciously. Choose today. Because while yesterday's thinking has created your life as it is now, today's thinking is creating your life as it will be. And that future life begins with the very next thought you choose to believe. The very next story you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of becoming. Kill your negative thinking, not just for your sake, but for the sake of all the lives you'll touch, all the contributions you'll make, all the value you'll create when you finally set yourself free from the prison you never deserved to live in. It's time. Your life is waiting.